Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the ban on single-use plastic. Now, manufacture, import, stocking, distribution, sale and use of identified single-use plastic items which have low utility and high littering potential will be banned all across India from 1st of July 2022. This is in line with the clarion call given by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to phase out single-use plastic items by 2022. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change had notified the Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2021 on 12th of August last year. Guidelines on extended producer's responsibility on plastic packages was also notified earlier this year on 16th of February. For effective enforcement of this ban, national and state-level control rooms will be set up and special enforcement teams will be formed. States and union territories have also been asked to set up border checkpoints to stop interstate movement of any banned single-use plastic item. CPCB Grievance Redressal app has also been launched to empower citizens to help curb plastic menace. So today we will discuss and analyze all aspects of this ban, which comes into effect from 1st of July. How will it be implemented and how significant is this development? And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us in the studio Mr. Ravi Agarwal. He's the patron of AIPIA and also the chairman of Environment Committee at the organization. Professor C.K. Varshney is also joining us, a well-known environmentalist and former dean of the School of Environmental Studies in JNU. And we also have with us Mr. Rameshwar Prasad Gupta, former secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Welcome, all of you gentlemen, to Sunset Television. I'll begin with you, Professor Varshney, because before we talk about how we are tackling this issue and, how the ban will become effective and what more needs to be done, let's understand the scope of the problem here as well. The use of, single-use plastic items, how detrimental it is in terms of the data we have and the steps which we are taking. Of course, that is the other part. But how big is the problem which we are facing?
I think the plastic pollution problem is a very serious problem and it is increasing by the day. It is estimated that 3.5 million tons of waste plastic is discharged and is wasted in our landscape. And that is a question of burden on our environment. It chokes the rivers, it chokes the drains, resulting into flood, as well as many other diseases carried by mosquitoes. At the same time, on the landscape, the plastic, it doesn't degenerate and therefore is a very persistent presence on the landscape. It prevents the seepage of water. And at the same time, bottles and the containers containing water during the rain really are the breeding sites for the mosquitoes, which gives you all kinds of mosquito-carrying diseases. Mm-hmm. So I think these are some of the problems which are there and increasing. Particularly the tourist sites and other places are very serious. Our solid waste management is not very effective. The materials are not sorted out, and therefore, even in the solid waste dumps, they create a very serious problem. Often they degrade, and many times, many plastics are colored and contain toxic chemicals, which over a period of time gradually leach and further add to the toxicity to the environment. So I think it is a permanent kind of a feature which really going to settle on our landscape, and this increasing burden of plastic has to be stopped. It's a global concern and India is also suffering from it in a big way. Of course, 300 million tons are expected to be discarded along the whole of the world. But in India, we have got 3.5 million tons and this quantity is increasing. And therefore, it has become very necessary that we should stop the single-use plastic, which after single use has no use, but becomes the environmental burden.
Okay.
And that affects one and all, and particularly the poor people are the worst sufferer out of this menace.
Indeed, indeed, the menace of plastic pollution is a tough challenge for everyone, specifically those in the poor strata of the society, and of course all countries across the globe as well. We have, Mr. R.P. Gupta here with us. Mr. Gupta, I pointed out certain aspects of how this ban will be implemented, how will it become effective. 1st of July is the date. That would be Friday, and there has been a long process of consultation. The rules were notified earlier as well. So if you could take us through the minute details of how will it be implemented on the ground, because this is a huge task.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vasane pointed out the adverse impact. Let me also add that plastic, when it is in the soil, it also gets broken up into tiny particles, which we call microplastic. And through this microplastic, through water, it enters the plants also, and we eat also. So that's how it enters the biosystem of humans and animals, and you can imagine what effect it can have on our body, as well as the kettles, particularly. Kettles, you might have seen, there have been cases. Kettles have eaten the plastic which had been thrown away. Now, let me come to the process which we went through. So this whole process of notifying these rules was carried out during my time. When Honorable Prime Minister announced that we should use single-use plastic, we should ban single-use plastic by 2022, we immediately started the consultation with all stakeholders, particularly the industry, the plastic manufacturers, the collectors, the persons who collect the plastic from the garbage, the users of it, those user industries. Widespread and very extensive consultation was carried out with all the stakeholders for roughly about 5 to 6 months. And then we picked up, as you rightly said, those articles which are low utility and high volume articles, for which the alternative was available, very easily available. Those items were targeted, and we issued the draft notification for banning them. We invited the objections, suggestions, because that's a statutory process, even though the widespread consultation before draft notification was already carried out. After that, in August 21, giving sufficient time of about 11 months for the industry to prepare for this ban and set up their systems to get the alternatives of it, that was given. So it's not that it's being banned on a day and you are being told that from next day onwards you can't use it. It was very well known, much in advance, and industry should have set up their systems because they knew that only the Prime Minister has given this call. Now, coming to how it would be
implemented.
How it would be implemented. Well, ministry, I'm sure, has put up a well thought out and extensive supervisory and monitoring network for its enforcement and implementation. CPCB has put out a portal. All the state pollution control boards, they are going to see it that it is properly implemented. The local bodies have been given the responsibility. And much more than that, much more than the enforcement and the punitive measures, it is the awareness among the public, which is very necessary to implement it in its true spirit. So that is where the whole, I think, throughout the year, the awareness campaign was carried out at the ground level. I'm sure this will be effective, and the companies, recognizing their responsibilities towards society, who are doing this, they will find the alternative sooner and put a ban on it.
Indeed, indeed. And the awareness is very much important there, the participation of all the stakeholders and the citizens as well. Now, we have with us the industry representative, Mr. Ravi Agarwal, here in the studio. Mr. Agarwal,
Yes.
as Mr. Gupta referred to, the entire process, a very exhaustive one in terms of consultations, bringing the stakeholders, including the industry on board as well, asking the industry to put in place alternative mechanisms. So two questions. One is, what kind of alternative mechanisms has the industry put in place to ensure that the ban is implemented successfully? And also, what is going to be the industry's contribution in ensuring that this does get the desired results?
One fact is certain, as Gupta ji has informed us, that due process was there, objections were called for, were submitted. Yes, the government did all its duty, but searching for a viable alternative, we are where we were. I mean, there is no viable alternative in sight. And to say that paper is at least a part of the problem solved, I don't agree with that. But paper is going 2 steps backward, using wood, cutting trees, etc. Paper is no viable alternative. And we have been, I am talking on behalf of the industry, searching for alternatives. Nothing can be made, nothing else can be made on these machines. And the workers more so are unskilled workers, most of them.
Okay.
And they are used to working on these machines. I don't think they can, because they are unskilled, they can do work on any other machine. I mean, let me put it that way. Without that, I mean, one thing is certain, that something has been found to be objectionable. It is law now, and the industry should and will cooperate with the government in enforcing this ban. There's no doubt. But I have a couple of submissions in this regard.
Please, go ahead.
Yes. One is that, seeing the total perspective, plastic waste in our municipal solid waste is a mere 6 to 8%. These are the government figures. 6 to 8%. And single-use plastic may be a percentage of this. This perspective has to be kept in mind. Number 2, the per capita consumption of our plastics in our country is a meager 11 kg per capita, compared to the worldwide average of 30, compared to the developed countries' average of over 100. I mean, this perspective has to be kept in mind.
Okay.
And our social milieu is entirely different from all these developed countries, so to say. And we can't force the requirements, we can't cut and paste the requirements of these developed countries to our social milieu. We are a developing country. I would say poor, I wouldn't say that. We are a developing country, and the usefulness within inverted commas of single-use plastic cannot be ruled out. It is used by the lowest cross-section of society, highest total cross-section of society, mostly by the...
But now it's a law, Mr. Agarwal, and it will have to be dealt with.
Of course, without doubt. I mean, you can't budge from that. Law is law. You have to maintain that. You have to maintain the decorum. You have to follow the law. We can at least just put our point of view across once again.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, disobeying the law is the last thing warranted. It must be obeyed, and more so, anything for the environment, which benefits the environment, must be and should be followed by all, irrespective of the cost involved.
So even if you go by the figures you pointed in terms of the per capita consumption, 11 kg, it's not very high, but it's not very low as well. And that we have the expert Professor Varshney. We'll take these numbers to him. Professor Varshney, as Mr. Agarwal is pointing out, in terms of these figures, these might look single-digit numbers, but then they do add to the pollution. Two aspects. One, do you agree with these numbers? And two, of course, the alternative aspects, the alternative solutions will have to be found out to ensure that the ban is effective and successful. Professor Varshney, we can't hear you. You will have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Let me just answer this question in 2-3 parts. Number one, that although our per capita consumption or waste of plastic is much less as compared to the developing countries, but considering the total population that we have, I think it is a huge quantity. And secondly, that most of our agriculture as well as society is dependent on natural resources, primary natural resources obtained from nature. And therefore, any damage caused to the nature, either on the Himalayan or on the hillside or on the plains or near the cities, is going to be very serious. Secondly, the per capita availability of the plastic is not very high. That is true. But this is certainly an environmental problem which has to be stopped right here,
Okay.
rather than wait for large consumption and large discarding of the plastic and then we attend to this. It is true that the poor people are using it, and I will agree to Mr. Gupta that much of the alternatives have not been worked out. It is here that after consultation, it has been left to the industry to find out the alternative, which perhaps should have been little more. We have to encourage and we have to really provide.
Okay.
And along with this, we should have really shown that these are the alternatives available.
Okay.
Because still the popularity of this scheme is not very high. Today morning itself, my vegetable seller was giving me the vegetable in the plastic bag, which I refused. Then he said, what happened, sir? Then I had to explain him. He said, he's not aware. So I think this awareness program should have been much wider and for longer periods of time so that every section of the society really understands the meaning of it.
Okay.
I must tell you that when we are talking of jabs, we have really advertised in various means, in different ways, day and night, and even then people were not enough motivated. And therefore, for plastic to leave them, that we have really consulted and all that is fine. But I think the most important part is that people have to cooperate. And to seek their
Indeed.
cooperation, we have to remind them again and again, so that it really becomes a part of their thinking, which somehow is lacking.
Indeed.
This is an important point that we have to make.
Okay.
And also, I will like to tell you, Mr. Ravi Agrawal, I'm sure he is aware that at present in Senegal, the world governments are really wrestling to ban the production of the plastic at an international level. And I think each country has to work very hard, first of all, for its own welfare, and secondly, as a good partner of the international community.
Okay. Okay, so in the larger scheme of the things, we will have to also look at the holistic picture. But I'll take those two aspects which both of you pointed out, Professor Varshney and Mr. Agarwal, as well to Mr. R.P. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, you've been there, during the entire consultation process as well. And when these norms were conceived and they were put in public domain as well, notified also. Now, one is, as Mr. Agarwal is pointing out, in terms of the alternative mechanism, that the industry is yet to find a viable alternative mechanism. Second is in terms of the awareness aspect, because all of us agree to this point here, that the most important stakeholder is the consumer, is the citizen. If the citizen is not fully aware, then perhaps, it might take a bit longer for this entire process to be successful. So how do we tackle these issues, Mr. Gupta?
First of all, let me also point out that some of the things that Mr. Agarwal pointed out, our per capita consumption may be low, but look at our population. So the total volume of plastic which is discarded becomes huge. Our population density is also much higher compared to the, let us say, US. US for about 1/4 or 1/5 of the population is having 7 times the area, land mass. So that the second issue, second factor which we will have to keep in mind.
Okay.
Third issue is the enforcement system and the industries and the stakeholders' willingness and abidingness to the law is much higher there. So you don't see in the developed countries the plastic littered all over, which we see here. Ultimately, it hurts the poor the most, to whom Mr. Agarwal was pointing out that they are the users. They are the one who gets hurt most. Then we have very limited soil, that is land mass, on which we have to carry out agriculture and other activities. Imagine if that is strewn with plastic all over, what will happen?
Mm-hmm.
That was as far as that aspect of the numbers which we are given. We must put full perspective in mind.
Okay.
Process, I don't agree at all with this assertion that alternatives we are not given. Alternatives for each single banned item has been given. It is available. Question of viability. Now, these are not unviable. What does it mean by viability? When we are talking about a menace of plastic which is hurting the society the most, the alternatives are not 10 times costlier. They may be 2 or 3 times costlier. And maybe with volumes, once you start using them, the cost will come down.
Mm-hmm.
Their cost is high because the alternatives cost is high because the volume is low. But if you give this kind of volume which you are giving to the plastic, the cost will come down. It may not come down to the level of the plastic articles, but definitely it will not be much higher than that.
Okay.
And we must see, when we are talking about usefulness to the society by banning it, we will have to, the society, the consumer, everybody will have to bear some cost. It
Okay.
cannot be available at the same cost. See, we cannot have it that without bearing any cost. Now, last point, as far as the awareness concerned,
Mhm.
possible the awareness campaign may not have been as widespread as should have been, and it must be carried out. I fully agree to that. Thank you.
Okay. So clearly, awareness is one aspect which will have to be focused upon. Last question to you, Mr. Agarwal. You're representing industry as
Yes.
well, and as both the gentlemen were also pointing out that of course there would be concerns, and of course the changeover process, the transitioning process will have its challenges. But the industry is also part of the society, as both Professor Varshney and Mr. Gupta are also pointing out. And this is a larger challenge, not only for the country, but for the world in terms of doing away with plastic waste or plastic pollution step by step. This is the first step. So from the industry's point of view and from the industry's side, what is it that you can tell the country that yes, the industry is going to put its best foot forward in these ways to ensure that this ban will be successful?
Very right. I mean, industry is not going to disobey the law. It is law, it's law.
Indeed.
That point we don't want to argue at all. Number two, I have a couple of different opinions. May I just voice it?
Please.
Professor Varshney said that he did not accept the vegetables in a plastic carry bag. But plastic carry bags does not come under this list. It is only the thin poly bag which is banned. And this does not come under the list of single-use plastic. They have a different law. The thickness has been increased to 75 microns, which will go further to 120 at the end of the year. I mean, this is different, number one. Number two, talking of alternatives, we have been all trying. We have not found any. You can't leave the public stranded on the road. This is...
But Mr. Gupta says that alternatives were provided, the options were given, and they are viable. They're not unviable to say. Of course, they'll be challenging.
No, I agree with Gupta ji that I don't want to put a price tag on environment. If something costs 1 rupee, it's bad. And if something costs 2 rupees, it is good. We should opt for the 2. I mean, no one will argue about it.
Okay.
I mean, no price tag on environment. First priority for everyone. The authorities, but can you leave the consumer stranded? And in this context, I want to say one thing very strongly. That is, we say we find plastics discarded on the road. What do you mean? Why do you use a passive voice? I discard and someone is not collecting. Someone is not doing its duty. What is this? Why should I say I, as a consumer, discard and someone whose duty is it to pick up? He's not picking up.
Okay.
That's the added problem. I mean, this problem adds up to all things.
Okay.
My one simple request to the authorities is just give this industry a little chance, increase the thickness as they are doing, make it heavier, let me put it that way.
Okay.
And well, government could consider with the help of scientists, this a possibility or not. And again, nothing going against the law. Nothing at all.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, we are running short of time, but your response on these two aspects, all other stakeholders, it's not just the producers, the other stakeholders in terms of those who collect the garbage as well. And we've already spoken about the consumers. As the industry representative, Mr. Agarwal is pointing out that can we go ahead and increase the thickness, or is that a plan which we can work on?
See, not all single-use items have been banned. It's the notified and certain items for which alternatives are available have been banned.
Okay.
Others, for example, packaging material that is covered under extended producer responsibility, where the producer, let me again put it out, because you are producing, then you are responsible for getting it collected.
Okay.
Not collecting by yourself, but getting it collected is your responsibility. That is what is extended producer responsibility is, and getting it recycled.
Okay.
So, see, we have covered the whole gamut of the single-use plastic.
Okay.
One is by banning certain items for which alternative is available, and the collection, the cost of the collection for these items compared to the weight of these is very high. That's why the garbage collectors, they don't collect these items. They have been banned.
Okay.
Other items which the garbage collectors collect because they get a certain price for it, which is viable, they have not been banned and they are covered under extended producer responsibility.
Okay.
So we will have to understand. See, the viability question, we can't have the viability at the same level for which the plastic items we are we are there.
Okay.
It will have to be a certain higher cost.
Okay, indeed. So all aspects have been looked at. That's what you're saying, Mr. R.P. Gupta. Thank you so much. We're running really short of time. Of course, this requires a more elaborate discussion, and we'll keep on coming back to that as well. Professor Varshney, thanks to you as well, and Mr. Ravi Agarwal also. As our experts were pointing out, clearly there are challenges when we're talking about ensuring a total ban on single-use plastic items, which are listed in those notifications out there, and that ban will be effective from 1st of July. But then we will have to tackle those challenges from an environment perspective, from the perspective of our future generations, and from a global perspective as well. If we look at the data simply, this is a problem which not only we in India are facing, but globally, every human being is facing this as a big challenge. We'll come back again with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.